Well, welcome viewers. This is my last installment in the Tickle versus Giggle behavioural-constitutional analysis. There's many other ways you can analyse this and prove it to be, you make up your own mind. But this is my last one, episode 15, when the system re-identified male and female. A procedural update appears quietly across the institutional guidance portal. Sex classifications must reflect affirmed identity standards across all operational environments. Now viewers, the sentence sounds technical, administrative, routine, but beneath the procedural language, something civilisational defining has now occurred. The institution has begun redefining male and female themselves. And that is the escalation between Tickle versus Giggle. The issue no longer is merely whether systems tolerate ideological reinterpretation. The issue is whether institutions now believe they possess authority to redefine what God created. Because once institutions abolish divine accountability, they do not stop at regulating behaviour. Eventually they attempt, as in the case of Tickle versus Giggle, to regulate reality itself. Male and female no longer become treated as created truths preceding government, law, policy, or institutional interpretation. They become administratively adjustable categories dependent upon institutional affirmation. And that shift changes the entire morale architecture underneath society. Because constitutional civilization originally assumed human authority existed beneath created order, not above it. And law was meant to recognize reality, protect reality, restrain evil within reality, not reconstruct reality according to ideological demand. But once systems enthrone themselves morally above God, they increasingly behave as though biological truth itself requires institutional permission to remain socially legitimate. And viewers, that is not neutrality. That is institutional self-defecation. Institutional self-defecation. You see, the woman defending female-only privacy protections is no longer simply defending preference or cultural tradition. She is defending the created distinction itself. Because once male and female become administratively fluid, every protection built upon those distinctions becomes vulnerable to reinterpretation underneath institutional power. Privacy changes, language changes, boundaries change, protection changes, and eventually even truth itself becomes treated as a conditional upon institutional approval. And that produces populations living beneath permanent conceptual instability. People increasingly learn that observable reality may no longer safely override institutional interpretation. And once systems gain authority to redefine fundamental categories of human existence, the institution no longer merely governs society. It begins positioning itself as author of human meaning itself, as in the case of Tickle versus Giggle. And that's why this conflict reaches far beyond politics and institutional corruption. It is fundamentally theological. Who defines reality? God or the institution? Because whichever authority answers that question ultimately governs the civilization beneath it. The institution still speaks softly. Its campaigns remain emotionally polished. Its representatives continue using the language of inclusion, affirmation, compassion, and safety. But beneath the therapeutic presentation, another pressure now governs the culture. Citizens increasingly expect to submit their understanding of created reality to institutional reinterpretation in exchange for social legitimacy. And that is why ordinary Australians, people in general, increasingly feel psychological exhaustion surrounding issues they once considered self-evident. The instability is not accidental, viewers. A civilization cannot endlessly redefine foundational reality without destabilizing the people required to live inside it. The office remains open. The police and policies continue expanding. The educational frameworks continue adapting. But beneath the procedural evolution, the deeper spiritual fracture becomes impossible to ignore, and by the looks of it, impossible to repair. The system no longer wishes merely to govern human beings. It increasingly wishes to redefine what human beings are. And whenever institutions reach that point, decline is no longer hidden beneath culture. The institution itself becomes a mechanism accelerating separation from God, reality, and the people it was originally created to serve. And my closing comment would be, and thank you to everybody that is listening and has listened so far, the institutions think that they are teaching God. And believe you me, that is not going to end well for Australia. That's just a comment. You make of it what you will. History's proven where the exaltation of institutions over God ends up, and it ends up in self-annihilation. The problem with that is it happens at the expense of the people they were supposed to be caring for. Bye for now.